The Croatan were one of 3 tribes of Garou who were native to the Americas, at least until the arrival of the Europeans. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. They sacrificed themselves, their entire tribe, to prevent the apocalypse. Let's get into it. Hello everyone, welcome to the Maple Table. My name's Nathaniel. This is a channel where we discuss lore around some of your favorite role-playing games such as Starfinder, Werewolf the Apocalypse. If that's something you're interested in, I would love to have you join me at the table, and you can do that by hitting the subscribe button and turn on that bell notification just to, appease the YouTube algorithms. If you weren't aware of this already, I do have a community Discord server, and it is a place where we can talk about games that we love, and it also serves as a looking for group. So if you want to find players to play games, come check out my server. Link is in the description below. The Croatan were very strong believers in cairns and the concept around those and septs. They are actually a tribe that took the sacred lands a little bit further than everybody else. The Croatan were also known as a practical tribe. They didn't really have that much use for poetry or flights of fancy. They were pretty serious business. Back in the early days of Gaia, when the continents were just one Pangea and eventually split, that's when 3 tribes of Garou set about to what would become the Americas. Now these 3 tribes described themselves as the Pure Lands Garou, which would later become the Pure Ones. The first tribe was the Uktena, and they were called the Elder Brother. And they would eventually settle in the areas of southern North America. The Wendigo tribe was called the Younger Brother, and they settled in the northern parts of North America. And this leaves us with the Croatan. They were called the Middle Brother, and they settled in the lands that would become Mississippi and towards the East Coast. These 3 tribes referred to themselves as the 3 brothers, not because they were brothers or family, they weren't any of that. They were called that more out of their roles between the 3 of their tribes and how they operated with each other. The Wendigo were always angry and making poor choices from their anger. Some might say it was the fires of youth. The Uktena, they sought wisdom, and sometimes they did so at the expense of being in the present. They wanted to know more about the future or be more wise towards the future. And the Croatan, they sought to be the balance between the two. Now when it comes to the Croatan and their kinfolk, they were actually really rather lenient. They really let their kinfolk do kind of whatever they wanted, as long as it didn't involve the Wyrm or destroying Gaia or hurting the planet in any way. The second some Wyrm influence or Wyrm taint got involved, that's when the Croatan stepped in and they put that down. But because they were so lenient, the Croatan were also the most open to the Weaver influence. And by Weaver influence, I mean tools that they would use to make their lives just that much easier. The Croatan worked with many tribes in the area. It wasn't just the Garou. While there was 3 Garou Native American tribes, there was other peoples in the area. And the Croatan were known to be not only the most social, but they worked well with these other tribes, sharing their knowledge of the spiritual world. They made pacts with the spirits of crops so that they had food to eat. It was this practice of agricultural farming that the Wendigo really did not like that. It was Weaver influence and it caused some tension between the 2 tribes. With the Croatan being the most social, not only were they interacting with other peoples and other tribes in the area, they were also the most liked or the most well-liked by some of the changing breeds that eventually became in the area. And actually, one old cairn of the Croatan became a sacred holy spot for the Camazots. The Camazots used this cairn as a breeding ground. It was for their breeding ritual. That was one of their roles. They were the Purifiers. And many of the old Croatan cairns, even to this day, they are still some of the most protected against Wyrm influence. Now, when the last Camazot fell in the North Americas, that was the last time that the Croatan cairn that was used for their breeding ritual was ever used. That cairn actually collapsed, and it's never been reopened. Now, the Croatan tribe actually drew their power from Gaia or the Earth itself, and they would then channel this power through their totem, Turtle. Croatan were known as solid, sturdy, steadfast. Those are a few good descriptive words for them. Some might describe the Uktena as watery or slippery, and the Wendigo could be described as windy bitter spirit. Of the pure ones, the Wendigo were known as the warriors. The Uktena had very powerful gifts for binding Wyrm's spirits, and this was something that they were very good at. And as I mentioned, the Croatan were known as the Purifiers, and in modern day settings, anything that the Croatan had blessed or purified is still very, very resilient, and these spots are very highly sought after. The Croatan also had dealings with Helios. They would communicate with the spirit, they would make deals. This didn't give them much favor with some of their other tribes, the Wendigo and the Uktena specifically. This made them butt heads again quite a bit. The Croatan are also credited, if you go into Garou history, as being the ones who discovered that there was a Triatic Wyrm and that it was even an issue in North America. They started to notice that some of their members of their tribe were falling to Wyrm taint, and this was a new thing for them because they were supposedly in the Pure Lands. They were supposed to be free from Wyrm corruption. And the way this manifested itself was the members of the Croatan tribe started doing rituals that demanded blood sacrifice, and this got progressively worse. So naturally, the Croatan decided to investigate and find out exactly what was happening. Three Scars, who was a theurge for the Croatan, was sent on an investigation mission, and when he returned, he had found the presence of a defiler Wyrm, as well as the first known evidence that the Triatic Wyrm was a thing and that it had presence in the Pure Lands or in North America, or the North Americas. The events of this investigation basically came to a head in 1589. That was when the Eater of Souls was released. It was a giant bane, a Wyrm manifestation that managed to come through the veil or through the gauntlet into the physical world. It would have brought about the apocalypse. And the Croatan sacrificed every one of their members in a very powerful ritual that they were hoping would kill the Eater of Souls. Unfortunately, all it did was banish it to the Deep Umbra, specifically into the Malphaeus. The sacrifice was just so big and it was so great that many members of the tribe died that day, but also no new members were born, ever. That was the end. That was the end of the Croatan. And their tribal totem, Turtle. It affected him so greatly because his entire following just disappeared all in one go that Turtle basically just went to sleep. And Turtle has not woken up for centuries. So what do I think of the Croatan and how would you use them in your game? Like with many things, the Croatan have a very tragic history. It seems to be largely set within actual historical references with not a ton of extra embellishments being made. If it was up to me, I would not use the Croatan in a game. I would not allow someone at my table to play one hoping to do a redemption story. I just wouldn't allow it. Now, if we were doing something that was set in the past, a game that was in prehistory, yes, but I wouldn't allow anything in modern settings, and that's just a personal preference of mine. You can do whatever you want at your table. If you want to do a redemption arc, wake up Turtle, and bring back the Croatan, completely fine, you do you. What I would do, though, is I would use the Croatan in modern games, and the way that I would do this is I would have the Karen come across some information about an old Croatan blessed Karen, one that your group has to go find, specifically because these locations would be very highly sought after, and they would be very, very well protected from Wyrm taint or Wyrm influence. I would allow a redemption arc for the totem and have this spirit come back. Maybe it takes on your group or it finds another home with somebody else. Again, that's up to you, but that's how I would run it. And if you're running a higher level game, maybe even have your pack or your party come across an ancient spirit who had dealt with the Croatan in the past, maybe taught them a gift of purification, because That was also something that they were good at. Talking with the spirits, purification. Maybe don't make it as effective as a true Croatan blessing, the rite of purification or the ritual of purification. Make it maybe, 1 or 2 steps down, but still very useful. That's how I would integrate them into a game that I was running. There is one other thing that you can do to integrate unknowable forces for your benefit and mine, and that would be hitting the like button. I know that every single one of my Patreon supporters is going to be doing that, so please join them in supporting the channel in the YouTube algorithm. Speaking of Patreon supporters, thank you, all of you, for the support that you're showing for the channel and to me. It really means a lot to me. Caneroot, Warpony, Ducky, Get of Mathrox, B.A. Bravo, Arutvan, The First Layer, Bones Malone, Westheimer, and Ain't No Waifu. Thank you all for your support. If you would like to join them on my list of patrons, then please check out the description below. If you would like to know more about some of the werewolf tribes, I have a playlist selected for you, so please check that out. My name's Nathaniel. This has been the Maple Table. Thank you so much for your subscription. Thanks for stopping by, everyone.